Welcome to our webinar for today is discussing the tools that we've put in place in IP for our petrophysicists. I am Catriona Penman and I'm the Ops Manager, Technical Ops Manager here at Geoactive and also a diehard geologist and product champion for our geology tools. So I'm going to spend the next hour with you talking you through the tools and elements that you now have available to you as an IP user. So the next hour, like I say, I'm going to have maybe half an hour on the slides and then a half an hour afterwards for a demonstration and some time for questions. Hopefully you'll have some for me. So we're going to start with an overall introduction to mapping, which I hope is not going to be a shock to your system with regard to why we want to map our well data and the benefits of being your own boss when it comes to building your own maps. And then we're going to talk about specifically the IP mapping tools, what's available to you, what you can do with your data on the spatial canvas that we have. And like I say, a demonstration and questions. So the mapping module that we have for IP as of 2025 is built to give you the freedom to generate your own maps without having to depend on anybody else. There we go. And you don't have to wait for someone to be free with their Petrel license or anything else to help build you those grids and understand those spatial relationships. The idea being we will provide you with these tools that can get your daily workflows just that bit more efficient, that bit more visual when it comes to working with your data across a region. So a brief introduction, we have, as Geoactive, we have two main products. We've got our Interactive Petrophysics and our Interactive Correlations. And the idea for the longest time is to try and make our users have a very efficient and helpful way to get to their decision-making process, whether that's a very detailed analytical, petrophysical or geomechanical evaluation or a geological summary or review of an area. What we're trying to do is bring together the best parts of both. So we have that analytical drive to get to the decisions, but we also are adding in more visualization to get to the decisions as well, to help build that evidence and show you and your team what you have come up with, what is your interpretation. So what I wanted to start with was a quick overview, and I'm not going to spend any time on IC proper, as it were, the full IC toolkits. What I wanted to really focus on was actually what is part of the mapping module that's available. So we've taken out parts of our data management and parts of the geology modules in IC to drive this mapping toolkit. And just because you can now visualize things, we wanted to make sure that you had access, obviously, directly from your IP database, but still maintain that security for your data, who can access it, how much can they access, be able to QC and query your well data and get to that visualization on the not just 2D visualization, but the 3D viewer as well. So we didn't want this to just be, oh, here's some gridding tools for you. We wanted to give it a bit more value to you so that you can understand and see why this is important for your workflow. So again, the basics, and please let me know if this is a shock to any of you, and I doubt it will be. But the idea of mapping wells, why do we want to do that? We want to be able to visualize spatially what's happening to the north, south, east, west of a particular well or within a particular area. Are there any trends that we can see? We want to be able to QC that data. So whether it's your water saturation or your porosity data or any kind of interpretation you've done, be it for your picks and tops or any of the other data, you can then visualize these and see, like I say, the trends, the anomalies, and QC fully go back in and have an iterative step that goes from the visualization back into the analysis, have a look at the data again. Why does that look anomalous? Why have I got a bullseye at that part of the map? Can I explain it? The idea of giving you the toolkit to build grids, so interpolating between the wells. This is the idea of using the data at certain XYZ points and being able to interpolate between to see those trends. And then we have the 3D QC side of things, being able to plot data along a well path with structural surfaces and help you QC that those tops, and move on from there. Ultimately, we are trying to pull together that analysis, visualization, and get to that decision making. But what is it that I'm really talking about here? We are getting to what is it that we're trying to understand? What is it? What are the questions I'm asking of our data? And ultimately, we as geoscientists are trying to understand what's happening in the subsurface. What is happening in this particular area that I'm interested in? Can I find analogues elsewhere? Can I characterize these rocks with the parameters, with the data that I have in a way that makes sense with what I'm seeing in the data? And how is it we're going to do that? Well, we're going to have that data integration. So we've got all the data coming into IP, and we then want to be able to interrogate that data. Which wells have this data? Which wells have a porosity between 0.1 and 0.2? Which wells have this XRD value for my, mineralogy breakdowns? It's entirely up to you what data you have and what it is that you're interested in, right? It's so flexible, but also very, very powerful. So with pulling all that together, being able to then choose, I'm interested in my reservoir zone. So what can I display around my reservoir zone? What can I show everybody else that's asking me questions about this particular play? And ultimately, why? Right? They're going to be asking for, well, why should I spend some money on this? Why should I go into this area? Why should I submit a license round application? All of those kind of questions are answered, or at least gotten closer to a decision on them with regard to those trends and anomalies and the characterization of the subsurface that you are doing and visualizing really quite powerfully in these maps. So as we step further into the IP specific workflows of this, I wanted to highlight a few things that is really just best practice and you will need when you start using the mapping module. And that is things about the wells themselves. So the position data. So a lot of IP databases that I have seen over the years will have maybe lat long data or maybe XY data, but realistically not both, not consistently. They might not even have a CRS applied because the detail is at the well in the depth and they're not worried about where they are in the world. The addition of the mapping allows us to care about where we are in the world and in relation to other wells. So that's a data management element that from a mapping point of view will need to become part of your IP workflow, is ensure that your well headers have both lats and longs, both X and Ys, and CRS systems attached to both of those. So your geodatums and your grids references. Also something to be aware of is your tops, your zone identification. So if in certain wells you've been using 1, 2, 3 as your zones, and in other wells you've been using ABC, what we need to do to be able to grid between the wells is understand that actually 2 is A and B is C and in the different wells. So there needs to be a consistency. That's what we're aiming for here so that we can understand, okay, it's zone A and it's zone A everywhere. We've named it the same thing. Again, when it comes to the stratigraphic zones, hopefully you will have been naming these correctly, or at least consistently. So that's the position data, the zoning data, and then the well names as well. So again, I know the way that IP works is you could have the same well labeled or named different versions, copies of the same well with different data in there. Now, from the mapping point of view, If you have the same well twice, it's going to bring it in once because it's the same well name and same location. So it's going to bring in that first one and ignore the next one. So what you need to do is, again, data management from your well's point of view is understand, oh, that's actually sidetracked, so I'm going to put an S on the end of this, or that is the same well. Why did I separate them out? Can I merge them back in together and have one well? Or that's okay, I just need that set of data. Again, it's just being aware of what is in your IP database and what it is that you want to map. Same goes for curve names as well. So something to be aware of from the mapping point of view. Right now, when you are creating your grids, your surfaces for your water saturation or any of your porosity water saturation parameters, when it comes to the curve name, so when you're looking at the log statistics, the mapping is going to want to have the same curve name across all the wells. It's not, from the 3D parameter point of view, it's not going to be able to go from your phi E curve, your phi Z curve, your phi T curve, and your phi B curve. All of those different names, obviously a couple of those aren't real, but those could be in IP absolutely present. But from a mapping point of view, right now, we don't say Z is A, E, T, and then B, and all the different versions of the phi curve. It has to be consistent. So again, it's just understanding the importance of making the data and wells consistent. And it's a nice best practice, if I'm honest, for any of your well data to go through that and set things, your final phi curves. Brilliant, that's the one to use. Okay. So how does the mapping work? In IP, hopefully you recognize if you use the 3D parameter viewer, you'll recognize that picture on the right-hand side. This is a little, it's 2 data, it's 2 points here I want to make, is there's 2 ways to get to the mapping from the IP interface. One is through the 3D parameter viewer, where you've already chosen the zones that you're interested in and the data that you want to be able to grid. And there's just a button in there that says mapping. And the other way is if you don't really know yet what you want to map, but you want to map lots of things, you can go straight into the mapping from the view menu. And again, in the demo, I'll show you this. So when you get to the mapping side of things, it's not just 2D, like I said, there's the 3D element. And what that allows us to do is actually bring in things like fault polygons and seismic interpreted surfaces. So that's what this little 3D spin around is showing. Some petrel surfaces that have come in and fault polygons that have come in, the well paths with some picks on there. Okay. So very basic list of what is it I can do with these maps now. When you start fresh on a map, and the new mapping, you can see very quickly your well locations. They're there for you to get started with. From there, you can easily add in things like shapefiles. So coastlines, quads, blocks, license round areas, all of that can be put in there. Then you've got things like integrating seismic surfaces. Now this is just a 2D of that 3D view I just showed you a minute ago. And that includes, on the bottom left there, you'll see, hopefully you can see my mouse, the little red, that's the edge of a field outline. We've got our seismic surface interpreted here. It's been imported from Petrel. And these are kind of a pseudo 3D look at a fault polygon. So instead of it just being a boring old black box, I'm showing you there is an angle, a tilt in these faults. Then you've got things that you can do to highlight data coverage. Now, the queries that are available for the mapping toolkit are, and again, I'll show you this in the demo, but can be used in 2 ways. One of which is to highlight on a map, such as this, what data have I got in particular, or in this case, what zones have I got in these wells? And you can see where there's a dark blue missing, or there's a dark green missing. This can help you, and it can be a simple thing as a where's my gamma ray, where's my porosity, where's my water saturation. They can all be applied. It's a very simple question, and you can highlight on a map. where these wells that you might be interested in, where do you need to take a deeper look. Then you've got the ability to build zonal analysis. So for a particular zone, show me my gross facies breakdown or my lithology breakdown. And that's what these little pie charts are. So at the well location, you get to see the different lithologies and the percentages within that particular zone. And that is just a gross breakdown. So from over here on the western side here, you can't tell whether this is lots of interbeds or it's just a big blocky sandy shale and then a shale. Is it at the top, at the bottom? Where does it look like? You can't tell from these bubbles, but you can tell from what we call analysis sticks, which is really just a mini plot showing the depth range. So again, the differences in options, and I will show you all this in the demo, is being able to see I definitely have a thicker zone of the Viking over here and a thinner zone over here. This is lots of interbeds. Oh, I've got some yellow in here. Okay, I can see that's interbeds. I have a thick at the bottom here, thick at the bottom, and you get to see a little bit more of the consistency or not, as the case may be, when it comes to the data you're interested in. Then you've got the idea of being able to draw your own shapes. Now, across the previous maps I had, this blue outline was not present. But what I've done is I highlighted my area of interest. And within there, I have then been able to generate my own grids and display the values, the data, but contained within that space as opposed to covering all of this area, which is not well controlled at all. I've been able to tie that closer into where my well coverage is. Now, that's just one use of it. The areas can also be things like highlighting where a water flood front might be, or your idea of actually, I think there might be a fault in here, or this area is all lacustrine facies. I'm going to do a shape around there. The idea of being able to generate these shapes, that can be lines, it can be polygons, are entirely up to you and what you need to highlight on your map. So really quite powerful when you get into it. Now, I've got a little case study here, a little example of what has been done before. And this is a set of wells, I think we're talking, it was like 300 or something like this wells. And we were given a spreadsheet that literally had well names on there and lats and longs, and that was it. So first thing we needed to do was actually generate our X and Ys. So we imported that spreadsheet into IP. We used under the tools options, there's the position tab, I say tab, section in that form, and we were able to generate the X and Ys because we knew geographically where they were and what the lat and long CRS was. We could determine the grid system that we wanted to use, and we were able to generate the X and Ys relatively quickly, actually. And once those were saved into the IP wells, into these new wells that were created, then we were able to start looking at data. So again, we had a spreadsheet that did not have depths on it, just a date of measurement and some salinity data and some other data. And we had to, in order to use them and work with them, we decided that we would make pseudo depths. So we used the value to be a depth, and we created then a zone that would cover those depths. Now, some wells just had one measurement. Some wells had 4 or 5 measurements at different dates. And what we did was we again made a one zone that covered the whole well. And we also made a second zone that covered the date. So instead of it being, the 27th of May, 29th of May, and the 3rd of June, there was a May and there was a June and a July and an August, etc. So we were able to do that. And in doing so, we were able to then generate, using the mapping button, generate a map with the well locations and also a salinity grid. So very quickly, granted, in the beginning, there was a little bit of manipulation for the data in IP, but once it was there, it was a simple view mapping, and then we chose salinity, and we were able to generate the map on the right-hand side. Now, that was the the display, as it were, for all of them. So that one zone that covered the whole well. But what we also thought was, well, what could we do to refine that? So we could, as you can see there, I've chopped and I've changed the color, but it's still the same data. I've set the contour levels to be slightly different, and I've refined it a little bit more. But that is still just all that data in one place. Then we have the idea of using those months to generate multiple maps. So from the very first, you can see where we have very few data points, right? Up in that June map, we only have 2 data points. So bullseyes, not a shock there. Over in July, we've only got 3 data points. So again, not a shock. When we get into August, we're getting a lot more clusters of data. So the measurement system of these wells has kind of come online a bit more. We're collecting them a bit further out. And as you can see, the color scheme, what I've done here is I've set from month to month the scale on these maps. I don't expect you to read them, they're absolutely tiny. But the scale on every single map is the same. So if it's blue in one map, that same blue is visible wherever that blue is blue, and the red is red and the green is green. So you can see the changes in that salinity value as we go through time purely based on the data points coming in. And we're able to identify potential trends from month to month. You can see lots of low values on the northwest side here, but the south and east sides are very high values. And then by the time we're getting into the later stages of this, it's actually north-south, and then back to the northwest, southeast trends. What does that mean? It's a way for you to highlight and question the data, question the wells. What should I be seeing right now? So you can identify those kind of things. And then you can integrate things like, oh, should there be faults that were active at this time? Or is this just nothing to do with the structure? Again, questions and going in and find the answers. All right, so comparing the direct color schemes, highlighting any potential trends or breaks in the data, and going and discovering what could that imply? Or is it just a mathematical throwback to the data? So next up, things like free water level. Now I wanted to highlight this because I know it's coming soon for IP25, is free water level is going to be automatically saved as a pick set in upcoming updates. So I have seen that in a test branch, so you guys will get it soon. But the idea behind being able to generate just a structural surface from a pick to highlight whether it's a tilted free water level or any kind of, a top Viking or top Permian or anything like that, you're able to do that. And you can see I have drawn with lines here, I've drawn on a pretty shady arrow, but it's there for me to see I have a trend here. All right, so again, any kind of pick or top can be used to generate these grids. You can use them for, the grids themselves can be used from parameters or curves or just tops. Depends on the kind of grid you want to generate. They are all editable. So if you decided that you wanted them to be different color or different shape or have more contours or less contours, they are all, that property form is accessible and you can change that to be however you need it to look like. And then once you have it set up with all the extra information, your scale bars, your key panels, etc., they can all be saved so you don't have to make them from scratch every single time. So there is a memory to the mapping. And then any structural surface can be seen in the 3D viewer. So I have some North Sea examples and I will do, my demo will be North Sea as well. But the idea behind being able to display in the 3D your well paths in the 3D space, plotting data along those well paths. So whether it's just your picks or you want to throw on a curve on there or zones, that's up to you. And then being able to plot multiple structural surfaces at the same time. So this is your depth surfaces, right? These are the ones that you can build for the top or base of any zone that you have. You can include fault polygons, like I showed you in that, well, this picture and also the 3D little spin around I did. That's that's fault polygons coming in from Petrel, but it doesn't have to be from Petrel. If you've got ASCII files with XYZs, have at it. You can put them in. And then you've got the idea of being able to drape on that parameter. So this is you closer to what you get in the 3D parameter viewer in IP, but it's just more spatially aware, really. So that's entirely doable as well. The extras, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about the extras that we have included in the mapping module for you, is being able to really quickly summarize your data coverage. So this is a really simple summary of what wells are in the project, the database, and what curves are present. If it's colored in on any of these, it means there is a curve present for those wells. You can see really quickly where you have multiple wells that have data and then very few data present in very limited wells. Same goes for any of the parameter sets, including your tops and picks. So well queries. This is where you get to use the queries to display the wells. So you can ask a question of the data of the wells and say, right, highlight the wells or show me the wells that are exploration wells. Okay, great. There's only 3 of them there, right? It cleans up your map display. But then you can also use it to have it be highlighting the wells. So of all of these, highlight the wells that have Hordaland group present. And you can see we have some wells that are still visible, but they don't have that orange highlight on them. So those are very simple queries, but you can stack them up and add in multiple queries to the database, to the map, so that you can see the wells that are going to be useful to you and are going to help you generate the grid, for example. When it comes to zonal analysis, like I say, we're trying to visualize and identify potential anomalies. We're trying to identify where you might need to go and take another look at your interpretation. So we can get that gross breakdown, right? I've already talked about this in a previous slide, but just to be able to highlight very quickly what's happening in that well, that's not fitting in with any of the trends that I expected to see. That's a completely different lithology. Have I picked the wrong zone? Is the lithology wrong? Let's go take a look at that data. And you can. So like I say, we're identifying anomalies, or we're identifying potential trends. So all those wells over there have lots of sandstone in them. Okay, great, that's going to help me with my depositional environments. When it comes to displaying those kind of zonal analysis, there's lots of different kinds that are available. So whether you're plotting text-based displays, so in this case on the map here, it's a subcrop map. So what is sitting directly below the bottom of my reservoir zone? And then I've got fascies on there. And same could be done for the zone names. Those are all text-based, supercrop as well. What's sitting directly above? Am I going to have a decent cap rock on here? Is it what I'm expecting? Then you've got the numericals. So whether it's a curve or from their parameters, you can build a display of averages. Now you can do this with a grid. Of course, it's going to pick up these same numbers and then plot between, but this can sometimes be a nice clean, at the data points here are my values, and they're all proportional, so you can see where you've got high versus low. And then I've added labels. You don't have to add the labels, but you can see where you've got small numbers versus the higher numbers. And again, identifying any anomalies. Why on earth is that one really big in this zone that you would think is quite low? Or is it a north-south trend or not a north-south trend? Is it east-west? So the between the wells, right? The interpolation between the wells. You can bring in from external sources or generate your own structural surfaces. You can generate thickness grids. So find a zone, top and base, or multiple zones, and calculate the thickness. Then you've got the parameters. So this is using components. So the parameters that you have set for your, like I say, your min solver or your porosity water saturation, that can all come across and be looked at. Then we've got log stats. So again, very similar to the component parameter grids, is going directly to a curve and calculating an average, a P10, a P90, a mean, a standard deviation, all of those values that you can do from 3D parameters, you can do in the grids here. The resources, now this is where you'll save your maps. This is where you'll import and create and save your queries, your surfaces, bring in your external surfaces, the saved ones, so the ones that you've made, the fault polygons that you bring in, any shapes that you draw, the background images, again, satellite pictures, something like that, you can put those on a map as well. And like I say, the queries. So you don't have to recreate them every time. If you're sharing a database, you don't all have to create the same ones. Once they're made, anybody can access them if you let them. When it comes to finalizing the map, there's lots of additional little options. So things like north arrows, scale bars, key panels, they can all go on the map. They're all controlled in the toolbox. Then you've got the setup. So showing your grid on the map, and you'll have seen a couple of mine have, the lats and longs on there. And then you've got things like displaying data along a well path. So if you have highly deviated wells that are visual on the 2D map, you can have a curve or pix or something plotting along there for you to help with your displays. Okay, on to the demonstration. Right, that was about half an hour. I'm not doing too badly. All right, so we have IP. I'm going to make it a bit bigger here, just so you can see hopefully a bit better. So you'll see I've just got, it's a dozen wells or so in here, and I've done some interpretation, and I've got some data. Now, the two options I have right now to get to the mapping is coming in here, the view and the mapping button. Now, what that does, it goes and gets my license for mapping, and it opens up the wells and displays, there we go, and it will display my wells on a location map. Lovely jubbly. But what it also does is set you up ready to build some grids. Okay, so whether it is a top, a base, or a middle of a zone, or whether it's a particular pick that you're interested in, you get to choose. Okay, so the left-hand side here is all about where's my source of data, what am I looking at, what parameter set am I looking at here, and what is it I want to do with it. So again, if you've got multiple tops, you can choose which top set you want to look at. The kind of style, the kind of surface you want to make, the grid that you want to calculate, this is where you get to choose. Am I doing a very basic, I just want a top structure. I want a thickness, or I want a component or a log stat. So what data am I interested in? What is it I want to build? Now we'll build just a really simple structural one for this just now. Then you've got the color scheme. Very simple. A lot of these you will hopefully recognize from IP. So this should match the palettes that you have available in IP, right? Doesn't, I mean, I'm just landing on the one when I stop talking, but you can go in if there's one in there or one of your own that isn't on that list, you can go in and load the palette. So if you have the PAL file, you can go and get it. And then you have options to create that top surface, and then you can see them in 3D. So that's all 3, 4, 5, however many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, visible at the same time. You have options here, for standard visualization in a 3D, really. You get to control what you're seeing, how you're seeing it. You can save templates. So if you didn't like this colored background, or if you wanted particular data to be displayed, you can set all that up and save it for templates so that next time, even if it's a different area, it can pick up those same parameters, those same data, that same display styles. Okay, but the idea is you've got multiple surfaces on here at the same time rather than just the one. And then from here, there's other options. So I'll do this quickly because I have it already. So I'm jumping a little bit, but because I'm in 3D and it'll save me coming back in again, is you can then drape another value on here. So I've got my phi data in here. So on top of that structural display, I now have my porosity values on here. So my dark to lights where you've got the high to low porosity values. All right. Now I was able to do that because I'd already been in here yesterday, last week, and I had already made some surfaces. Now I know that because I can see them all sitting over here. All right. Every time you come into the mapping toolkit, you are able to create, delete, remove, change, modify anything that you'd like to display. So this is the surfaces we just made that I can turn on and off one at a time, right? And if any of these, if I decided, oh, well, okay, yeah, I can see why I'm constrained top and, left and right here, east and west for my surface. I can actually go into this properties of this and go in and change, I don't like that color scheme. All right, choose something else and apply it. Ah, that's a lot less painful on the eyes. Okay, well, actually, you know what? I want to go from 8,000, so I'm typing in numbers here, to 10,000. That's my scale here, and actually I want that to be for every 25 meters. So you see my contours have changed. My coverage is slightly changed. I can change the decimal points as well. I can tidy everything up. All right. Now, there's lots of options in here. I can go in and change that. This is what we built. This is how we got here. But what I could do is say, actually, I want to change this. It's not structural anymore. It's something else. Or the mathematics behind it, I could come in here and say, you know what? By default, we use a kriging method. All right. There's another 5 on offer here, but there's a help file that'll help you as well. But ultimately, the math behind each of these methods are different. And depending on the data you're hoping or planning to display in grid, these might have different results. Well, they will have different results. And you have complete control over some of them, whereas others, it's no, this is the math and that's the end of it. But you can influence it in some ways. So again, we'll just apply. So you can see for one that this has covered my whole map. It's interpolating a lot further away than just the well data points. And then we have the size of the grid. So again, this is 700 meters by 400 meters because I've set the system defaults to 51 by 51 cells. You've got complete control over this. All right, whether you want them to be 200 meters by 200 meters and the number of cells doesn't matter, or whether it's something else. Again, that will have a potential impact on how smooth things are or what data is used. But already, bullseye, what's happening here? Can I explain that? Right, that's ultimately where we're trying to get to with any of these. Now, this surface here, if we follow along to the west side, the left-hand side of the screen here, if I go into my structural area, I can see this is the structural. So that's the one I was just in. So if I was to go into this place here, to the properties here, you see everything is as I did over here. It's all connected. It's all the same thing. It's just different access points. All right. Now, that's a get started fresh way of getting to the mapping. If you go in through, let's bring IP bigger again. Here we go. And instead of going through just that mapping button, if you go through the parameter viewer, you can come in here. You can tell I was practicing for you guys earlier. You can see where I've been. But you can come in and pick a parameter set, and there's this mapping button down at the bottom now. All right, so once that's active, you can click that, and it goes in to the mapping, and it's already made the grids. You don't have that properties form to choose anything. This has just made them for you. So all the defaults are used. And so we should have kriging in here, 51, and the display, again, that's because I like these colors. I must bleed these colors, I'm sure, but I like these colors. So that's my default. I set that up when I was in here last time, but you can choose your own default style, the colors that you use for this, but that's them. So I can now go in here and say, okay, well, I just mapped out from the cutoffs, my average pay here. So, phi here. So these are the surfaces that we just made. Brilliant. Job done. One click and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 surfaces made. I've got a map open that I can now go in and save if I want to use that. I'm not going to save it because I've got a lot of maps that I want to kind of show you around a bit more. But that's the 2 routes in from IP. So if you wanted to map some curve data, and again, unless you know exactly what curve you're going to be looking for, which I can never remember. So we will go in for, I'm sure I had a core. There we go, porosity there. So I now need to go like this and search that for all of them. So you can see I now have the values, right, from the curve. That's my average values. I could change it to be a sum, right? The numbers are changing here, my minimums, my maximums. Now, I can also do the percentiles. I can choose anything I choose up here is going to be the grid that I get on the mapping. Now, something that I didn't mention before actually, but is valid for parameters or curves, is in IP, if you were to go in here and run the visualization, you get your one surface that's an amalgamation of all of those zones, right? Oh, sorry, wrong tab. Whereas in the mapping, it picks up each of these and maps them independently. So if I was to say I don't want Evie, I'll only get 4 surfaces. If I don't want Bessie, I'll get 3 surfaces. Okay, so when I hit mapping this time, oh, again, an IC's hiding. Okay, so we now have oh, if I actually hit the button, that's also helpful. So when you choose this, it picks up that same course. So right now, if I went in and changed this curve, it wouldn't let me map that out. Okay, so when I hit the mapping this time, and it refreshes my mapping, no, I don't want to save it because I didn't close it last time. There we go. So it's obviously I don't have any decent data in that Hawkins because it's my cap rock, so I won't have hopefully any porosity from the core or even core in there. But again, I'm getting my values. It's doing its best to pick up. If this was going from 2,000 to 10,000, you would not be getting it every 0.1. All right, it's trying its best to make sense of the data it has. And again, the properties can get accessed and changed at any single point. Okay, and that's as easy as that. You might just want it to be contours. You don't want the color at all, you just want to see the contours. You might want to be able to color change the line or highlight certain depths or values or whatever the cutoffs are that you want to look at. All doable. All right. No, I don't want to save that one either. So I've got a couple of examples because beyond just the gridding generation and displays, there's a lot of different elements of the mapping that I want to show you. And I know I showed you this in the spreadsheet, but the PowerPoint, but I just wanted to kind of walk around a map a little bit and show you what you can do with it. So if we come out from the grids point of view and have a look, this is a coastline along here. So I've already added on that shapefile. I have some well queries that I have previously made. Now I can make these into folders and have them make sense, right? I could have a whole folder of my strat and say, okay, present, yes or no. On this case, I'm just going to grab the whole folder, which is a quick way of me grabbing individual queries and add them to the map. So I'm highlighting wells that have my bulk volume water curve. I've got within a particular GIS shapefile, and it has certain curves present. Okay. Now, these are all very simple queries, and they can be added, like I say, previous ones, drag them on, you're good to go. But you can create new ones at any point. All right. And I'm not going to actually spend my time because I've only got 10 minutes left, but there's a lot you could base your queries on well header properties. Okay. Are they in a particular block or quadrant or township, etc.? And you also have the ability to add extra header information. Okay. The well name, again, do you have a well list that you've already created an IP to filter things? Great, go and find it, use it. That can be used in here as well. When it comes to the data, when it's a case of does the data exist, does the data have a value greater than, less than, all of those, then let's see, what have I got? RW, let's go with that. So has it got data logged? Nice and simple. Or is it greater than, equal to, or less than? Did I update this in the last week? Or did somebody update it in the last week, the last 2 years, etc., etc.? Or do I want to find the wells that don't have that data present? Now that's really simple, but what you can do then is actually step down into and that's enough. That can be a query. That's a lot of these queries on the map. But what you can then do is actually look at, well, I don't want it to just be logged. I want it to be logged in a particular zone. And whether that zone is, chord interval or reservoir or anything like that, that's when you can start building more complex queries. And before you even save it and use it, you can test it to see, well, what wells will that give me? Do I want this to be saved for all projects in my database? All right, so that's how you get in there and you can access any of them. New query, build it. All right. So the other things that I showed you on the PowerPoint were these summaries. So all of these, again, are really quick, nice way. If you have a query, you can use it in here as well. I'm just interested in those wells. Oh, no wells. That was a bad query to pick, Katrina. Well done. There you go. So you filter things, you'll get a handful of your 2,000 wells. And then from here, you can go say, all right, yeah, fine, but what does it actually look like? And you can get the browser to open up and show you. It comes across with all of your curve sets. So anything that you have in IP, right? This is still reading from IP. So it's just a case of, well, where should I be looking for this? All right. And you get to have a little preview of it in here as well. All right. So that's your queries and then data access kind of thing. The other things are the drawing of shapes. So again, it's just a case of I have run some analysis and I'm going to swap over maps. Here you go. I've run some analysis and I now have my average rowette clay in the Hawkins zone. All right. And that's great. So what I'm going to say is, okay, these wells are the same. So I'm going to draw a blob around those. And you're just going to create a new polygon. Always handy, Katrina. We'll go to the maps and we'll draw a polygon and then just start clicking, right? This is pretty crude and fast, but if you had things that you wanted to loop around, you could do that. You can then set a color, right? All of this, you can leave it empty as well. And now you have a shape. And then from there, that can be impacting your grids as well. Like I showed you before, you can have that be a little mask that pops out the grid that you're interested in. And like I say, that doesn't have to be a polygon. It can be a line. So there is my Cretaceous shore face. Oh. And it's going to be orange. It's going to be thick. All right. Things like that. And you can start building up elements of your map. All right. So the zonal bubbles, right, like I showed you before, they're a breakdown. But what I didn't show you really was the idea of having them be proportional. And these are obviously very small. So you can see them coming in there. All relative to each other are quite thin. All right. But when you have them set fixed, and I don't want them to be 19, that'd be too big, you can get a better look at them. What you can also do is, can you see down in this southern well here, I've got a tiny little wedge of interpreted tops within this particular group. I can actually say, you know what, limit it by the parameter under investigation, and I can apply that. So it shows the whole, it's spread out, but it does say limited, okay, by the coverage. So you're not thinking that that's a full zone. You've got the limit on there. All right. Now, other things that I really quickly, I've got 10 minutes left, I'm doing all right, was the idea of you get new wells drilled and you've added them into your project or your database and you've been working on it, you've got some grids that cover part of the area, but actually you've got new wells over here. What can you do? Well, you could go in and you could create a new surface and create another one. But this one, you've spent time, you've got your properties the way that you want it to be. You just want to resize it. You want to cover those new wells. Excuse me. So what you can do is come in and go, all right, okay, I want to grab the, oh no, I dropped it too soon. I missed these wells now. But really, what I tend to do is maybe very lazy, but I like it, is I just double click and it gets me up to where I want. And obviously I've done something to the values in here that they're all coming in at 0. But when you've got data that actually makes sense, then we will just have it reapply. Okay. That you can then change the size and shape of this grid. Okay. So I've already done the drafting part, so that was good. I jumped ahead for that one. Another little extra bit that is sometimes helpful when you have lots of data that you want to differentiate wells is, yes, you can highlight it with well queries. Yes, you can use them to hide or not display certain wells. Okay, So again, we could use a query to say, right, anything, these wells, these are the only ones I want to see. So that well disappears. Actually, no, I want to see them all. I want to highlight them a different way. But what you can also do is use the results of those queries to help decide, well, what ones are going to be orange and what are blue and what have a highlight on them. That's another way to differentiate wells, excuse me, for your maps, for what you need to differentiate. All right, so whether you are mapping out your porosity across the whole area, right? So again, get your wells on there. That's the control points for this grid. All right, you can say, I don't want to see the names, I just want to see the wells. So surface, TD, and the well path between, those are all controlled by this space here, right? So where you have other options, what it is that you want to display, all right, that can all be added in really quickly from this toolbox on the side. All right, so that's all the really quick into all of the mapping tools that I had wanted to say, because I've got a few more slides and I've only got 9 minutes left. So let's go back to the slide deck. And the idea before I go back to the slides, the idea behind this is being able to run your zonal analysis, get the details of your reservoir, your source rock, your potential reservoir for carbon storage. The purpose of these maps are entirely up to you and the data that you have loaded, right? So when you have bullseyes that aren't really matching the trend that you're expecting, you want to be able to go into there and say, well, what's going on? Is it the pics, or is it my parameter set, or actually is it the curves? You can go in and look at the tables of data, but ultimately you'll probably end up going back into your IP interface and having a look in a log plot, right? I mean, again, I'm a geologist. I like the visuals. Tables are a bit too numerical and mathematical for me, so I would much rather be looking at cross plots or log plots and going, oh yeah, actually you're right, that top should be way down here, and that's going to change all of those parameters that we just gridded up. So then you go back into the mapping and you start again. Okay, so that's what we're trying to get to. Okay, so the idea behind the use, what I want to highlight really here as I wrap up, are the potential uses and what you could have the mapping do for you. So if we start with simple geological evaluation, you have your parameter sets, you've got your curves, you've done your petrophysical analysis. You want to maybe, I don't know, traditional hydrocarbons, right? You want to highlight where you've got a decent hydrocarbon column, or you have a decent thickness of reservoir, or you want to map your oil water contact or your free water level or anything like that, you can throw in and create grids, right? There's lots and lots of different kinds of grids that you can generate. It's all about what data is available, and you go from there. Other things, and this is more for IC, the big IC, the proper with all of its modules, but this is what feeds the mapping, is there's monitoring. So if you've got your historical drilling data, your production data, pressure, temperature, volumes, fluids, anything like that with a timestamp on it, you could do chemical isotope analysis. Where's your half-lives, etc. Figure out the mapping of that, and also there's lots of different additional display types with that. But again, that's from the IC proper side of things. But from a data management point of view, the mapping is going to give you that access to the data directly from IP, be able to query it, see the summaries, identify where your data is versus is missing, and allow you to go and ask more questions of it and go look elsewhere. Hang on, have you seen that end of well report? I don't have a copy of it. It's not referenced in this well. That kind of thing. And then again, another one that is, oh, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button. Another one, again, it's IC proper, but from a correlation point of view, being able to plot that 2D side by side the wells, space them out spatially, you know, oh, that well's really close to that well, it's just a sidetrack, that one's 2 kilometers away. What real impact does that have on what I'm seeing in this well? Is that realistically going to impact my interpretation or what's going to lead me to my decisions? All right, so being able to characterize each of those systems, each part of your petroleum system or a storage system. Where's my cap rock? How extensive is it? How thick is it? What's it made of? What is my clay volumes, etc., etc. All of that can be done to help map out the sweet spots. Now, I do not expect any of you to read this now. I've popped this up so that when you go back and watch the video, you can pause and read all the extra benefits that IP with mapping can give you. And I'll leave it there for just another second, and then we can move on to my final slide. And I just want you to see, I want you to understand just how powerful and flexible that this mapping is when it comes to your requirements, what you need it to do with your data in IP. All right. So why would you bother making your own maps? What is the benefit to you versus just waiting for your geologist to get done with their mapping assignment for themselves? Is step one, yes, you absolutely have that quick review, the queries coming in. Those tools are available with this toolkit, and you can identify the wells that you're looking for. So which ones are meeting the criteria that I'm asking for, the parameters that I'm setting for this project? You are absolutely more independent. You're not waiting on somebody else to be available. You can iterate multiple times before you have to go back again and ask somebody else for input. And of course, obviously, collaboration is key to any subsurface project. So talking to your teammates, I'm not saying that this would stop you doing that, but you do have more control over it and less dependencies on waiting for somebody else to have the time to help you with this. And like I say, ultimately that visualization is going to get you to choosing the parameters, identifying the anomalies, being able to see a trend from north to south or east to west or whatever direction that you're looking at, that actually, why am I getting hot over here? Or why is my pressure building over there? And maybe there's a structural element I need to go and look at that I haven't factored into my petrophysical single well analysis. So it's trying to tie in that bigger regional aspect of things. All right, so this is my final little blurb for today, but I just want you to have a think about the power of IP, right? Hopefully you're all IP users and you know exactly how powerful all of those calculations are, from a single well to multi-well, single zone, multi-zone, all well. Imagine that power attached to the flexible visualization of the mapping module. And ultimately, we are getting deeper and deeper into the subsurface data and having a better grasp and finding those insights that the data can provide for us when we're asking our questions. Should I drill here? Should I have a look at this area? Should I go further with this project, or should I stop? All right. Is this the perfect place for the next carbon storage site? That kind of thing. You are using this as a tool to access your data in a way that makes your lives easier and get you there faster. All right, that is exactly what we're trying to do, is make your life easier, and hopefully providing these new tools will get there. I have not left much time at all for questions. We've got about 2 minutes.
Thank you,
thanks,
Katrina. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it's really valuable to see these things in action. So thank you for doing that. We do have one question, which has come from Gary. Will this IC mapping in IP display scales in miles versus kilometers?
Yes.
Easy answer. Nice and simple. Nice and simple. Okay, and I guess I'm also aware that we often get asked around whether this mapping is a separate module or whether it's part of the core product. Could you clarify things around that as well, please?
Absolutely. So the mapping module is actually an add-on. So you don't need to have your image analysis for this to work, and you don't have to have your geomechanics, but as long as you've got your foundation, that platform element of IP, then this becomes an add-on module. So it is a paid-for module, it's an additional thing, but it gives you access to all of those visuals that I showed you today and the data management tools that we talked about today. And it's right on the screen, but I forgot to mention that There is training available. So to get to grips with all of those tools that I flew through today on here, and you will see, I mean, on YouTube, right? There's a few videos on the mapping already, but there is training available, and I have popped up a link, but I realize it's just a shortcut link. But go onto the website and you will find under the training section, you'll be able to send in a request if you wanted a day's training on how to get started with this mapping.